Okay, you're good to go.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody out to the North Ogden Planning Commission meeting. Today is July 1st, 2020. I'm Vice Chairman Mason. I'm standing in for Chairman Thomas, who unfortunately is not with us, and he will be sorely missed because he's better at this than I am. We're going to start, as we always do, with a invocation by Commissioner Lunt, followed by which he will give us the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Lunt.
All right. Our Father in heaven, we're very grateful for this beautiful day that we've been blessed with today. Grateful for the opportunity that we have to meet as a planning commission tonight and to discuss the future of the great city of North Ogden. We're grateful for the opportunity we have to serve, and ask you to bless it as we discuss the things that we have on our agenda tonight, that we will be able to have clear minds and be able to have civil conversation and be respectful of the views of those around us, and come to the best decision possible to lead the growth and the future of our city. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Please stand and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lunt. Well done. Our agenda we'll start soon with our agenda, but we're going to start with approval of our previous two planning commission meeting minutes.
Brandon?
Yeah.
Just a note before we begin, we have a new transcriber for our meetings, and she has joined us tonight on the Zoom call. So if you wouldn't mind saying your name so that she can kind of get to know our voices and things like that. So maybe each time you speak, just say, "This is Nicole," and so that she can get to know us.
Well, can we call her by name? I'd like to give her a warm welcome.
It's Christina.
Christina, hello, I'm Brandon. Okay. Back to the minutes. Thanks for that, Lynn, and we'll try to be attentive to that as we remember. Back to the minutes. I hope everyone's had a chance to review the last two meeting minutes carefully, as we were instructed to do, and we should always be doing. Does anyone have any consideration on those minutes? Without any further discussion, I'd entertain a motion to approve them.
This is Commissioner Nan Carroll. I'll make a motion that we approve both the June 3rd, 2020 and the June 17th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting minutes.
I will second that. This is Commissioner Waite. I will second that.
Thank you, Commissioners. Any further discussion on those? I would call for a voice vote by all to approve the motion put forth by Commissioner Nan Carroll. Say aye.
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 Any opposed? Please speak up, raise your hand. Okay, there were no opposition to the minutes being approved, and they pass. We're now going to hear from our planning director, Rob Scott, and he's going to read our opening minute statement. Do we have public in attendance who would be interested in that? Let's see,
We
yes,
do.
one. Okay. So Mr. Scott, please let her rip.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners, and audience. I'm going to explain the process that the Planning Commission will use in making decisions and the rules that govern the agenda items or hearings. The Planning Commission is interested in receiving public input and treating everyone fairly, both interested parties and applicants. The Planning Commission is governed by Utah state law and the North Ogden City zoning and subdivision regulations. These codes contain criteria that the Planning Commission must follow in making its decisions. Before each agenda item begins, city staff will give a report. The report will identify whether the item is an administrative or legislative item and list the criteria that govern the city's decision. After the staff report, the applicant will speak first. Following the applicant, audience participants will be recognized by the chair to make comments or ask questions. The applicant has final rebuttal time. Applicants or their agents will be allowed up to 10 minutes for their initial presentation and 5 minutes for rebuttal time. Persons speaking for a committee and or a board will be given 5 minutes. All other individuals will be entitled to 3 minutes. Prior to speaking, anyone who needs more time to present evidence must ask for more time. If you wish to be recognized, at the bottom of the screen, there's a raise your hand feature on the chat button at the bottom of the screen. So indicate that you're interested in making a comment, and then you will be recognized. Any information, argument, or evidence you give must relate to the criteria listed in the staff report or other criteria in the general plan or land use regulations that you believe apply to the decision. Any materials that are displayed or referenced, pictures or written materials, are part of the record, and in this case must be sent to the commission. The Planning Commission has adopted rules regarding outside contacts, otherwise known as ex parte communications. Commissioners are not to engage in communications outside of the public meeting regarding administrative applications. If you desire to speak to commissioners on these matters, it should be done at a regular meeting so your comments, concerns, and evidence are on the public record. And of course, please mute as appropriate so that we don't have interference with cell phones or other conversations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. And I thank the public and for everyone's patience as this is a non-standard meeting with the whole raise hand thing. And I'm going to try to pause and give ample time for those of you who may be figuring out how that works to use the chat feature to speak with us or to be called upon. But just like in any meeting, we ask that you keep your conversation civil as always been the case. So thank you. Okay, let's get into our meeting. First, we'd open it up to declaration by any of the Planning Commission members. Would it have any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest to disclose to the rest of us? If there be any. Okay, note that no conflict of interest exists on tonight's agenda, none were disclosed, and we can move on. This is the part where we come to public comments for items which are not on our agenda tonight. If you have a comment specific to an agenda item, we ask that you hold it for that point of time where it's more applicable. But if there are any public comments for anything we do not have on the agenda, we entertain those at this time. With a brief pause. Lynn, do you see anybody raising their hand?
I don't see. Yes, here we go. Just
Okay.
a second. And if you'll please state your name and your address. Go ahead. Julie?
Sorry, had to unmute. Julie Anderson, 940 East, 2600 North. I just have a question on the home that is being built on 850 East, just above Powell's old white home. Can somebody tell me how they're going to get in and out to that home? Do we know?
I've not reviewed that. I couldn't answer that.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if anyone else. Yeah.
Well, each lot that is approved by the city as part of a subdivision has to have frontage on a dedicated street. And so not knowing which lot you're specifically talking about, that's the mechanism that that lot will end up having access to that, to their home.
Okay, so it's on 850 East, and it's as you go up, it's part of the what is it, it's right here, Mountain Valley Villas. They have a house that is being built right on 850, but I don't know how they're going to get into it, because I believe in order to have access onto 850, they were supposed to bring this back to the city council, if I'm not mistaken.
Typically, subdivisions are approved by the Planning Commission.
Okay. All right, that's all I had a question for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Looks like that's all the hands we have raised.
All right, let's move on to our administrative items section. We're going to talk about item which would be 5 on your agenda. Some of you may have an agenda that included the opening meeting statement, which would have bumped that to number 6. Consideration or action regarding preliminary approval of the Webb subdivision, which is a 3-lot subdivision and a revision to the Mountain Valley Villas, phase 2 final approval by Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners, audience. As indicated, this is a preliminary approval for the Webb subdivision and a revision to the Mountain Valley Villas Phase 2 final approval, which you considered at your last meeting. I'll go into detail with respect to what those changes are going to be. So this particular property, we have a companion item that is going to be as part of a public hearing here in a few minutes that will involve the rezone, hence the proposed zoning is shown as well as the existing zoning that's there. So the proposed zoning for this project is going to be R18 and R18 AG. I'll go into a little bit of explanation with respect to that here in a minute as well. So this is an administrative application. What the Planning Commission is the land use authority in this instance. It's the Planning Commission has limited the degree of discretion, and examples of administrative applications include subdivisions. Administrative applications must be approved by the Planning Commission if the application demonstrates compliance with the approval criteria. So, Lynn, maybe you could scroll down to the subdivision design. It's on a aerial photo, and then I'll keep going.
Is it on another exhibit?
Yes, keep going down.
They're not connected. I'll need to open that up.
It's not.
What
Scroll
exhibit
down
is
to
it?
it. It's
No,
it's C.
There isn't a C. Oh, wait just a sec. Okay.
Okay, so maybe you can just expand that a little bit so it's a little easier to read. You'll see that on the south end of the project, that's 2600 North. On the north is the street is 2625 North. You'll see that there are 2 lots that are going to front on 2600 North. 1 lot is going to front on the new 2625 North Street. So there are 2 homes that are existing on 2 parcels, lots 1 and 2. Lot 3 is going to be divided off in anticipation of a single family residence that will be built on this, what will become lot 3. And they're also interested in building a detached accessory dwelling unit. So I'll go into a little bit of explanation on that here in just a second. So as part of this, you'll recall that as part of the Mountain Valley Villas subdivision, you can see on the northwest corner of this plat, you'll see lot 4. Part of lot 4 is being acquired through by the purchase of the developer there of a portion of the Webb property. And so I wanted that to be noted. And also, you'll see the detention basin that's there to the south and the west side of the plat as well. So you'll see that there's a red line that extends towards that detention basin. In order to meet the setbacks for the detached accessory dwelling unit, the detention basin is being modified, and that a small sliver is being incorporated into lot 3 to be able to accommodate that. The city engineers looked at the size of that particular parcel, and it really is not going to impact the detention basin at all. So he's satisfied with that. So with those two adjustments, that's the reason why we listed on the at the beginning of this item a revision to the Mountain Valley Villas Phase 2 final approval, just to make sure that it's on the record that those adjustments are being made. Next is that
I'll ask a question about that while you're talking about that little
Sure.
dot that comes out towards the detention basin. So the purpose of that is for an accessory dwelling unit to be there, correct?
Yes.
But in my opinion, the intention of the ordinance, maybe not the way it's written, but the intention of the ordinance is to prevent flag lots and things where you have a house piggybacked by another home, right? And that's my interpretation of an intention. I don't necessarily believe it's clearly written that way, but it would seem like an accessory dwelling unit there, when it makes that weird jog, would basically be putting like an apartment in somebody's backyard. That's a concern I have, and it's obviously an irregularly shaped lot, but do you know what I mean?
If you'll remember that our detached accessory dwelling unit requirements state that a detached accessory dwelling unit has to be located in the rear yard of the home of the lot that it's being built on. So
Right.
lot 3, as you can see, is, what is it? It's a huge piece of property.
Yeah, it's 1.1 acres.
Well, yeah, it's well over an acre,
Certainly.
and it does need to meet the setbacks. So, the applicant and I have worked to make sure that the appropriate setbacks are in place so that accessory dwelling unit would be able to be built. So it does meet all of our setback standards.
Certainly. And I'll reserve my comment for the discussion phase then.
So as far as the lots themselves, and the total subdivision is 2.15 acres, but with these adjustments, that number is going to be adjusted as well when it comes to final in that. So as I mentioned, there's a companion rezone map amendment that is being proposed as part of this. The current zoning is RE20, and lots 1 and 2 are proposed to be rezoned to R18. Lot 3 is proposed to go to R18 AG, and because they have animals, that would allow for them, because of the size, to be able to continue to have their animals. Okay. Next, I mentioned, can we just leave that plat up there, please? Lynn?
Sure.
I'm going to reference that a little bit as well. So as you can see, these lots, they all, the R18 and R18 AG's requirements are basically the same, 8,000 square feet. They're all interior lots. The lot width has to be a minimum of 80 feet. So the lots themselves do meet those standards. A technical review committee meeting was held back in January of 2018. It references the Powell property, but the requirements are the same for that project as well as this one. We have an engineer report from Lauren Gardner, our city engineer. And one of the things that he points out is that 2600 North is projected to be widened. And as a part of that there is not a defined road width for 2600 North, and there is not exactly let me go back. There hasn't been a decision made relative to if both sides of the street are going to be impacted or just one side of it is going to be impacted. But before final approval is granted for this subdivision, the city engineer will be working with the applicant to come up with an appropriate dedication amount. And so the lots 1 and 2 will still be able to be conforming lots. Does that make any sense? And maybe we could just ask Lauren Gardner if he has any comments relative to that. Lauren?
Yes, let me say that in the future, 2600 will be widened, and it will be widened from the current library all the way to Fruitland at one class, and then east of Fruitland, it will reduce down to a lower class. But as Rob said, we haven't determined yet which side, the north side or the south side, that will be acquiring additional right-of-way. And as part of this subdivision, before we get final approval, that will all be worked out, and it will be required to be dedicated on this plat.
So commissioners, any questions about that?
Yeah, it's back when Mayor Taylor was here on the Barker Park Committee. We had to take into account the road is going to be only widened on the south side. We had to do that account for where it's going to put stuff on the park. So now that's changed.
It hasn't necessarily changed. We're just evaluating it to make sure that an opportunity, if we have to acquire some, takes place before final recordation. So,
okay. Yeah, because I was real concerned because I was about ready to put my house up for sale because it's going to widen it right into my driveway. And I didn't like that.
That's anytime there's a widening project that involves homes that are existing along these streets and what have you, obviously it ends up being potentially a really emotional circumstance. So,
well, it's not my home's on the street. It's just where my home sits.
right.
We had a long discussion about widening 2600 over this.
So that's obviously you're further to the east with respect to those properties.
Correct. And that's where we mentioned you have to reduce it down after Fruitland Drive back down to a different distance because of some of those issues.
Yep, that could very well happen. So the next thing that I wanted to bring up, the geotechnical report that was done for Mountain Valley Villas is being utilized as far as this property as well. There needs to be a secondary water will serve letter that they'll be providing for us before final as well. We will be double checking these, and the current design shows appropriate lot widths and square footages. The appropriate bearings and so forth on side yards will be identified as part of final as well. I mentioned that there are a number of accessory buildings, and if you go to Exhibit E, Lynn, this is the site plan that we've been working on. Yeah, you'll note that outlined are 3 accessory buildings, and there's actually a 4th large accessory building up to the northeast corner of what will be lot 3. The applicant is wanting to make sure that those accessory buildings are able to meet the setback requirements, and or he may actually end up deciding that he may demolish some of them or possibly even move some of them. So those will be identified as part of a land use permit review, and as we go forward with this, as we go through this to go to final. Lastly, the street right-of-way width for 25 North is shown as 48 feet, not the standard 60 feet, as a result of the low impact design standards that were approved as part of Mountain Valley Villas. So with that, the general plan for this area calls for this area to be developed as low density residential, and it's within the Old Town neighborhood. I've given you on the staff report a summary of requirements. Comply with the staff report, engineer report. The property will have to be rezoned prior to recording. Land use permits will verify the accessory building locations, obtain the secondary water will serve letter, and identify the amount of dedication required for the 2600 North widening. Summary of land use considerations. Does the proposed subdivision meet the requirements of the applicable city subdivision and zoning ordinances? Is the proposed subdivision consistent with the North Ogden City General Plan? Staff recommends preliminary approval of the Webb subdivision subject to the conditions of the staff report to include the transfer of a portion of the detention basin parcel into the Mountain Valley Villas Phase 2 subdivision into Lot 3 of the Webb subdivision. So I'll be happy to answer questions, Chair and Commissioners.
Thank you. What discussion do we have on this? First of all, is the applicant here to address us?
I don't see him here.
Okay. Help me out, Rob. Do we want to hear from the public on this item first?
Sure.
I'm always interested in hearing.
I'll put myself on mute, and I'll see if I can't get a hold of Johnson, because I'm sure he'll want to be participating. So.
Okay. Let's open this up first if there are any public comments on the matter. I have my thoughts on it.
I don't see any hands.
Thank you. Okay. Commission, do we have any thoughts? My concern here is not that this doesn't meet the ordinance and it shouldn't be approved, because I think it should. My concern is that I see a possible loophole for something that that we may want to address in the future. I don't think we have the ability to tackle it tonight, but it's for the outbuildings when on an irregularly shaped lot, to basically have the ability to stuff a dwelling unit in somebody else's backyard through the use of irregularly shaped lots. And now Mr. Webb couldn't avoid that with this, I don't believe. I think he's been working with the city, and I commend him for everything. But I just have a concern that you know, we could allow we could approve a subdivision with a jot like this, which would essentially stick a home in someone's backyard. And I believe that the intention of our ordinances is to avoid flag lots, and we've pretty much said that. And so, have we created? Now, this is a very minor one, and I don't think it's offensive the way the building's shaped or positioned. You know, it's not like somebody's front porch is staring into somebody else's back porch. I don't think that's what's going on here, but I do have a concern in the future that we maybe address that. And I don't know how to do that. Those are my thoughts on that.
You know, Brandon, you brought up a point earlier that I want to go on with, what you just said I agree with, but also I get concerned about accessory dwelling unit on this property. At some future date, is it going to turn into a flag lot when sold? Because where that unit's at.
those are among the concerns I have with the irregularly shaped lots, right? Now, in this situation, the way the applicant's drawn out where his home will be and his garage, I don't see the ability for that to happen, right? There'd be no access to that accessory dwelling unit to make it a flag lot. And like was brought up earlier, the question earlier, how would this person access the road? Well, that they can't right there. So I'm not specifically concerned on this property about that, but in general, I think you brought up a good point. It's a potential for someone to skirt around around our codes and create a flag lot.
Just to report, I tried to get a hold of Johnson and he's not responding, so.
Okay, well, for myself, I see no reason in there to deny this application. This has come before us a number of times. It's been altered a number of times, and I believe that the applicant's working with city staff to make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and I don't see any reason to deny it. But I philosophically think we have a loophole in one of our ordinances. Is there any other discussion on this then? Because without further discussion, I would like to entertain a motion. Quiet night.
This is Commissioner Nancarrow. I'll make a motion that we grant preliminary approval of the Webb subdivision, subject to the conditions in the staff report, to include the transfer of a portion of the detention basin parcel in the Mountain Valley Villas, Phase 2 subdivision into Lot 3 of the Webb subdivision.
Thank you, Commissioner Nancarrow. I would wonder if one of the contingencies of this should be the approval of the, or the recommendation and the approval of the subdivision rezone that's going to be heard tonight.
It's already in the staff report,
That's in there? Okay, thank you, Commissioner Lund.
and I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion about the motion? Okay, I'll call
Johnson.
we're going to pause for just a second. Looks like the applicant may be on the phone.
That's okay. We'll just press on. Well, can you? Well, it's a Zoom meeting. And so if you go to the city's website and go to agendas, then you'll see the connection and you'll be able to be recognized if you want to say something. So they just, okay. They might have some questions, but it's up to you.
So I'm personally not overly interested in holding up the people that are attending the meeting, the public, for the applicant.
All right. Thanks a lot. You bet. Bye.
Dial in. So I would propose we move on.
I'm sorry. I did get a hold of Johnson. He's going to try and join us. So.
Okay. In the public's interest and, to be courteous to everyone's time, I think we would still move on unless anyone wants to move that this item be tabled until further time.
I don't know if any of the other commissioners have any questions for the applicant, but I'm happy to move on.
I'm happy to move on as well.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Then I would ask for a vote from Commissioner Lund,
Yes.
Commissioner Nancarrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Waite,
Yes.
Commissioner Barker.
Yes.
I vote yes, and the motion passes. And my pen ran out of ink during all that. Okay, so if the applicant does dial in, he's going to have a second feature here on our agenda. But let's move on to our legislative items, specifically ZTMA 2020-04, public hearing, consideration, and recommendation regarding rezoning property at approximately 800 East and 2850 North. From R18 to R18 Ag, no, from R18 and R18 Ag to RE20. Mr. Scott, the time is yours.
Thank you. This is a legislative item. And the property, as you identified, is at 800 East, 2850 North. This property has frontage on 2850 North and also the acquired Monroe Boulevard right-of-way, which is on the west. The frontage of the property on 2850 is zoned R18, and then it goes back a certain distance, and then the remainder of the current property is R18 AG. So it's got a split zoning on it as of today. This property has almost 3.6 acres, so it's a good sized property. And the request is to rezone it to RE20. This is a legislative decision. I'll share that. The Planning Commission is acting as a recommending body to the City Council for legislative matters. The city has wide discretion in taking legislative action. And this is an example tonight of a zoning map amendment, which is a legislative action. Legislative actions require that the Planning Commission give a recommendation to the City Council. Typically, the criteria for making a decision related to a legislative matter require compatibility with the general plan and existing codes. So the applicant is requesting a zone change for this property from R18 and R18 AG to residential suburban RE20. The purpose for this rezone is that the property owner purchased this ag property to build a new home and a large accessory building for a shop. So the property is being rezoned to comply with the revised accessory building amendment and the RE20 accessory building standards. So this parcel is not being subdivided. Once the zoning is in place, a building permit for the home can be processed immediately. The accessory building permit would not be processed until the zone change would be approved. In terms of conformance with the general plan, there's a certain number of standards, general statements that we use as guidelines and judging whether or not a rezone should take place. Such guidelines, as identified, sometimes they conflict with one another, but the Planning Commission has to prioritize which ones are the most appropriate and important for the consideration. So I've gone through and I've identified a number of these for you to take a quick look at. The first one is a general guideline. A definitive edge should be established between the types of uses to protect the integrity of each use. This low density general plan designation calls for a variety of single family zones, including the RE20 zone. Secondly, zoning should reflect the existing use of the property to the greatest extent possible, unless the area is in transition. The comment is that this parcel is over 3 acres, is compliant with the RE20 zones, and is more restrictive actually than the existing R18 and R18 AG zones. Where possible, properties which face each other across a local street should be the same or similar zones. This parcel fronts on the 2850 North, a collector street, and also the future Monroe Boulevard. The single family homes to the east and the Scottish Highland subdivision have the R18 AG designation. Zone boundaries should not cut across individual lots or developments. We do have a split zoning today, and this rezone would combine them into one zone designation. We have some guidelines for residential zoning. First one is avoid isolating neighborhoods. The proposed zone change will not isolate the existing neighborhood. Require excellence in design. A building permit will be processed for the future home and accessory building meeting city standards. And lastly, consider development agreements to assure higher quality development, and no development agreement is being proposed. In terms of the summary of your considerations tonight, Is the proposal consistent with the general plan? How does the proposal relate to the zoning and land use policy guidelines? Recommendation is conduct our public hearing, receive comment, consider the general plan rezone guidelines, and make a recommendation to the city council. Staff recommends approval of the rezone from R18 and R18 AG to the RE20 zone. The Planning Commission can find that this application is consistent with the general plan. And as a part of this particular ordinance, the attachment A may or may not have been given to you, but it will identify the specific outline when this goes to the council. I'd be happy to answer questions.
I do have a question. Since you've met with the applicant, I'm assuming, and discussed the intent of what's to be built there.
Yes.
Once this becomes a home, where will the access to the home be? Will that be onto the future Monroe, or will that be onto 2850?
It'll be a long driveway coming from 2850.
That brings up a number of concerns for me. I mean, we've talked tonight already about flag lots, and it appears that we're making a giant one here if we do that.
Well, I can tell you that neither the previous application nor this one meets the definition of a flag lot. They have the appropriate amount of frontage for the property.
Right.
Yeah. The frontage on 2850, Brandon, this is Commissioner Waite. The frontage on 2850 is it's actually a little bit bigger than the two existing lots to the east of it.
That's clear. You can see that in that on that, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, in a real loose sense, it's a flag lot because there will be a house behind other houses, but you know, if you could look one block east, just past, I mean, most houses have backyard neighbors. I have look out at Scott Barker's daughter's backyard from my backyard. So I mean, yes, that's how this works, I think.
So I've met with the applicant several times to talk about this property. There's no anticipation at this time to create a subdivision. However, I have counseled them to be careful about where they place these buildings so that it doesn't limit them if in the future there was a desire to create a subdivision.
There are a couple other things about this. So the property immediately to the north of it was already a 3-acre parcel. So, I mean, this matches a lot of the properties and the uses currently going on there. There's 2 really big lots, and then several of the lots to the west of it are already, I don't know what the zone designation is, but most of them are half-acre lots, even if they're not zoned as RE20 lots. So it does fit fairly well with what's going on in the neighborhood, at least to the north and to the west.
Well, in general terms, this is the kind of motion that the public comments that we hear are generally wanting to see and never see, right? And that is the balance between the developers wanting smaller lots and the public at large wanting more open space, right? And so now we actually have a situation in front of us where we're trying to take a zone which is smaller for smaller lots and make the RE20 zone out of it. So it's one of the few times I think that it goes in that direction.
I think it's interesting. We've got 2 legislative items. One, and they're exact opposites of each other. One is to take an R18 and an R18 AG and turn it to RE20, and the other one is to take an RE20 and turn it to R18 AG and R18. I've never seen anything like this. I think it's really interesting.
And they're both in the same area.
Yeah, they're within a quarter mile of each other.
Yep.
Okay. Before we get too deep into the discussion of this. I would like to hear from the applicant. And we do have a public hearing for this, correct me if I'm wrong?
Yes.
Yes, we will open a public hearing on this as well.
I don't have the applicant on.
Okay. Well, I'd entertain a motion to open the public hearing. Am I jumping the gun on that?
You just open it.
I'd like to open the public hearing. I forgot I have this power. This is supposed to be Eric's job. Okay, if there's any members of the public that would like to address us on this, we will open this for public hearing.
I don't see any raised hands.
Okay, a motion to close the public hearing?
Yeah, I will make a motion to close the public hearing. This is Commissioner Waite.
Commissioner Barker will second that.
Okay, all in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, further discussion by the commission.
I was just happy to hear that Rob Scott's talked to about the fact you need to be careful to replace the buildings. So, you know, for future, if there's any future development on it, doesn't cause conflict for them.
Yeah, this is the, anyway, seems like one of those few times when the public by and large is going to be pleasantly surprised that the lots are being rezoned to a bigger requirement, a more restrictive requirement, which it's just generally what adjacent homeowners want to see. So I have no concerns with it. Okay, do we have a motion to make a recommendation to the city council?
Yeah, I will. This is Commissioner Waite. I will make a positive recommendation, or I'll make a motion that we forward a positive recommendation to approve the rezoning of property located at 800 East, 2850 North from R18 to R1 and R18 AG to RE20.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, Commissioner Nancaro, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Lunt,
Yes.
Commissioner Barker,
Yes,
Commissioner Waite?
Yes.
I vote yes, and the motion passes for positive recommendation to the city council. Thank you all. Which brings us to our last legislative item, a public hearing back to the Webb property. Motion to recommend to the city council whether the property in question should be rezoned from RE20 to R18 and R18 Ag, which, as noted earlier, is the inverse of what we just approved. Or even Steven. Everything balances. If approved. Commissioner Scott or Mr. Scott?
Thank you, Chair. You've given a nice introduction with respect to this specific recommendation. We've gone through many of the details earlier as part of the subdivision preliminary review. Again, this is a legislative item, and I hope I won't be too repetitive, but I'll try and hit just a few of the highlights. So the applicant is requesting this zone change to the R18 and R18 AG properties in order to accommodate a 3-lot subdivision. The R18 AG will be on lot 3, which will allow for animals. The property is an independent project. However, portions of this property are being coordinated again with the Mountain Valley Villa subdivision, as indicated earlier. The subdivision design will account for the dedication of a portion of 2600 North, and we're going to want to make sure that the final zone lines between lots 1 and 2 and lot 3 will be determined as part of that widening decision. So we don't have an exact line at this point, but we will as part of when that final subdivision design is accomplished. A condition of approval for the Mountain Valley Villa subdivision is that this property be rezoned prior to recording. Remember, part of this parcel is being, of the Webb property is being incorporated into the Mountain Valley Villas project. I've gone through the transfers. I don't think unless people have questions about that, I won't go through that again. The lots that front on the 2600 North are proposed to be rezoned to from RE20 to R18, making them conforming to those requirements. And again, the third lot 3, the third lot is proposed to R18 AG in order to retain the animals they currently have. I've done a further analysis relative to the general guidelines for consideration of zone changes. The first one being the definitive edge should be established between varying types of uses. The low density general plan designation calls for a variety of single family zones, including R18 and R18 AG. The zone boundaries reflect the nature of the proposed Webb subdivision. Zoning should reflect the existing use of property to the extent possible. Part of this property is being transitioned from ag into residential. And that's consistent with what's going on with the rest of this neighborhood. Where possible, properties which face each other across a local street should be the same or similar zone. The properties, proposed zones are consistent with adjacent property zoning. Zoning boundaries should not cut across individual lots or development, and this rezone will adjust lines to be consistent with the proposed Webb and Mountain Valley Villa subdivisions. Avoid isolating neighborhoods. The proposed zone change will not isolate properties within the existing neighborhood. Require excellence in design. A companion subdivision application is being processed for this project. And lastly, consider development agreements to assure higher quality development. No development agreement is being proposed as part of this project. So your summary tonight is the proposal consistent with the general plan? Secondly, how does the proposal relate to the zoning and land use policy guidelines? Staff recommendation, conduct a public hearing, receive public comment, consider the general plan rezone guidelines, and make a recommendation to the city council. Staff recommends approval of the rezone from RE20 to the R18 and R18 AG zones. The zone line between lots 1 and 2 and lot 3 will be adjusted depending upon the amount of dedication required for the future 2600 North widening. The Planning Commission can find that this application is consistent with the general plan. And with that, I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome.
I have a question. This is Commissioner Barker. When we start talking about the widening of 2600, the dedication required, is there an amount that we need to require for that? Since we don't know for sure.
We don't have that amount now, but we will have it as part of the final subdivision design.
Okay.
My understanding, Commissioner Barker, on this is that this is important, the widening of 2600, because we're going to make the proposals to make a lot that's, what was it, 9,200 square feet, as I recall? And,
right.
And it's going to have a minimum requirement of 8,000 square feet. So if the widening of 2600 takes off 1,200 square feet of that, then the lot, or more than that, then the lot would not qualify for the R18 zone anymore.
That's correct.
So I think what they're trying to do is just make sure they've got that sufficient boundary in there, which I commend them for.
Okay, I just want that I hate to see you approve it and say, oh, I'm sorry, we messed up because we didn't require enough for widening 2600.
Okay, any other questions for staff prior to opening a public hearing?
Brandon, I have a question for Rob.
Lauren, is this is this Lauren Gardner?
This is Lauren Gardner, the city engineer. Yes.
Okay.
Rob, that small portion of the Webb property that's going to be part of Lot 4 of Mountain Valley Villas, is that being rezoned also to the R18 versus the R18 ag?
It is R18, correct.
Okay. That's all.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay. Let's go ahead and open our public hearing at this time. Let any interested members of the public please raise your hand and address us with any concerns or comments about this proposal.
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, let's pause for just a second, make sure everybody has an opportunity to. I know that the applicant is in attendance now. Does the applicant have anything for us? Oh,
He does.
Okay.
Go ahead, Johnson.
I actually don't have anything. I just wanted to make sure that if there was any questions for me, then I'm happy to answer them. So, but I don't have anything to say. I think it's all been covered.
Well, do we need him to state his name and address then with that comment?
Yes.
Okay.
Johnson Webb, 800 East, 2600 North, North Ogden, Utah, 84414.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Okay. I'd entertain a motion, given that there's no public wishing to address us, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing. So moved by anyone?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I will second that motion.
Sorry, that was Commissioner Nancarrow who made the motion.
And Commissioner Waite seconded the motion.
Thank you, Bo. All in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the public hearing is now closed. Time for any discussion among the Planning Commission. I personally feel this item's come before us a number of times. It seems to be consistent with the surrounding area. Seems to be generally a good thing. I'm completely in favor of it. Are there any opposing views
Nope.
or thoughts?
This is Commissioner Nancarrow. I make a motion that we recommend to the City Council that they approve the rezone of the property at approximately 800 East, 2600 North from RE20 to R18 and R18 AG zones, and that the zone lines between lots 1 and 2 and lot 3 be adjusted depending upon the amount of dedication required for the future 2600 North widening.
I'll second that. Commissioner Lunt.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion about the motion? Further questions prior to a vote? I would entertain somebody making a motion. Oh, we have a motion. Let's vote on a recommendation to the City Council. Commissioner Barker, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Waite? Commissioner Waite, you're on mute.
Yes, I am. Yes, I vote yes.
Okay. Commissioner Nancarrow?
Yes.
Commissioner Lunt?
Yes.
I vote yes, and the recommendation will pass to the City Council. Thank you all. Let's see where we are on our agenda. Okay, that concludes our administrative and legislative items for this evening. Move on to any remarks by the planning commissioners. Anybody have anything for us?
I've got a kind of a silly comment. I don't know if it's silly or not. As I was reviewing the minutes from the last two meetings, when we were talking about whatever it is, Pheasant Run or whatever that one is. There, in the staff report, there was a note that the lot property is currently vacant. And this is where it's just me being OCD. I kind of don't like it that way because it wasn't vacant. It was in active farmland, which is not vacant. But that's just me being me. Because there is property that is truly vacant. It's growing nothing but weeds and stuff. And but this one was not. It was is a very active, well-kept farm ground. And so I don't consider it vacant. But as I say, that was just me. I don't know.
Noted. One thing I've noticed, guys, just as a kind of a housekeeping thing here, performance of viewing the document online is always so poor when we view it in a web browser. I just like the Planning Commission to note that I've had a lot better success downloading. So you view the document and then you click on download and then opening it in a PDF viewer if you have one on your computers. So, and if you're using this on a mobile device, I don't have a solution for you. But I've been in these meetings coming down to my makeshift guest room office, and I've been downloading the document and dragging it and opening it with a PDF viewer. I use Adobe Acrobat Reader DC, and I'm able to traverse that document without those long delays that I'm assuming everyone else is experiencing. So kind of a pro tip there, at least that's been successful for me. Hope you guys have similar success with that. I don't have any remarks regarding city business though. Anyone else? Okay, do we have any remarks from our planning director?
Thank you, Chair. I do have several things. First of all, John Call is on vacation and we excuse him tonight. Secondly, I had an opportunity to participate. I think some of you may have been invited to be a part of this Quality Communities Academy. I don't know if any of you had an opportunity to tune into that or not, but they have recorded that. So I'm going to work with Lynn and share with you that link. It was, I felt, a very instructive hour and a half to talk about the significance of community identity and things that make our downtowns, et cetera, special. So that'll be forthcoming. A couple other things. We've got a couple of joint work sessions coming up with the City Council. One of them is next Tuesday on July 7th, and you'll be getting a formal agenda forthcoming here, I assume, Lynn, probably the end of this week. But we'll be meeting over at the Village of Prominence Point site near the where the corner of 1700 and Washington. So there's a side road that was dedicated here recently. So that's where we'll meet. The developer has identified some changes in location of some of his project. Frankly, preliminarily, I like what they're doing. They're going to adjust the independent living facility location and move it over to where we'll be standing. And they will be making a not as tall a building where the current ILF site is shown. So that should be, in my opinion, that is a positive. So the developer is supposedly going to be giving us a document to help us capture his vision. I have not seen an outline of that. Hopefully it'll come in and we'll get a chance to review that. We'll be able to get a chance to review that prior to the meeting. The second joint work session, the Planning Commission's voice has finally been heard. The city council's joint work session is going to be a part of our July 15th regular meeting. So you won't have back-to-back meetings, but it will be, or back-to-back days of meetings, but it will be a back-to-back meeting. So the purpose of that particular topic is to review the North Cove project, coming back again. So it'll be an opportunity to discuss that project again. So with that, wish you all a happy Independence Day. It's wonderful to live in an amazing country that we do, and have opportunities to participate in these processes that we have responsibility for. So I wish you the best there. And on top of that, stay safe and stay healthy.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, it looks like our city manager is not present tonight, so we have no remarks from him. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Wow, nobody? You want to drag this out?
I'll make a motion. This is Commissioner Wade. I make a motion that we adjourn the Planning Commission meeting.
This is where someone seconds it. I
I'll
would second.
second.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Nancarrow.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks all. Have a good evening.
Thanks.